When I made my schedule for my personal curriculum, I had something scheduled every weekday. Now, I knew this probably wouldn't work perfectly for me, but I don't regret doing it this way because it does break everything down into manageable chunks. You probably came from the other personal curriculum video I made, so I'm not going to talk about how I decided to break down my assignments and break up the reading. But anyways, I've been finding myself doing a lot more batch reading. And because I didn't overwhelm myself with assignments, this actually works really well. I choose a morning or an evening where I don't have a lot going on and I can just focus on getting in the zone of reading, because sometimes it does take me a bit to do that. This works well for me. I think it's more of a realistic approach for most people, but it's still pushing myself. Like, I have about 4 to 5 hours of reading every week, and I might be able to knock out half of that in one sitting. So if I'm only able to get in one batch reading, that's like 2 hours, how am I getting the other stuff done? My original plan, as you may remember, was to use an hour before I start work. And I really did try that for the first month. I really tried to make it work. But I actually really like jumping straight into work in the mornings. It's when I'm the most focused. And if I don't start work right away, it's honestly kind of nice just to be able to relax, just have extra time to not be thinking about something. I really think part of the problem is that I read at my desk and I open my laptop when I sit down to look at the Notion calendar to see what I have to read. But then my email inbox says 30 new emails. So I have to open it and, oh, that person needs this done really soon. Let me make my to-do list for the day. But I could actually just knock it out right now, and then I don't have to do it later, and then I'm working. So I don't think reading at my desk is productive. It's productive for work, but it's not productive for the personal curriculum. I probably have to change locations. But back to the question, how am I getting 2 more hours of reading in if I'm not using that hour I planned before work? I've been finding small moments through the week that work really well for reading, and this seems to work better for me than trying to carve out the same chunk of time every day. One thing to note though, I am the type of person who will get it done. I really don't procrastinate that much, so I don't have to worry about not getting it done, not reading the book. If it's Sunday night and there's chapters I just haven't gotten around to reading, I know I'll make it up next week, and I always do. So if you are a chronic procrastinator, this video is not for you. Please stick to your schedule. But what are some examples of these small moments through the week? Saturdays are my big clean and cook days, so I do really like to listen to audiobooks during that time. I really enjoyed reading Genesis as soon as I get back home from church. Sometimes I'll knock out a few pages when I'm eating lunch. Also reading in bed if I'm physically tired but mentally very, very awake. I read until I'm ready to sleep, and honestly, the books are pretty boring. They're not going to keep me awake. So I feel like it's a safe thing to do to wind down. So I'm not sticking to the reading time schedule I originally planned, and I'm not sticking to the actual schedule either, like the order of the books I'm reading. So I want to go through and organize my calendar. Now, the reason the calendar is a disaster is not my fault, partially. I ordered this book, actually, and it took like over a month to show up. I was planning like a month, so I had to reschedule around this. I'm also using a lot of library books, so when I'm putting them on hold, I'm either getting them too early or too late for the start date. And with library books, what I do, and what I think most people should probably do, is start reading it as soon as they check it out, because you do have a limited amount of time. So it feels like I've been reading everything except what I have scheduled to read, and part of that is my fault. There are days when I do not have the energy to read something very slow-paced, with a lot of terms that I keep forgetting what they mean, so I have to keep going back to look it up. So if I'm sitting down during lunch, I want to read a few pages. I'm not going for the heavy reading. I'm going to pick up something light. So switching between lighter and heavier books has worked well for me because it keeps the momentum going. Because sometimes it's like, oh, I have to read this really dense book. I don't have the energy for it. It comes down to I'm going to read something light, or I'm not going to read anything at all. And because I have so many books lined up to read, I think it's fine to jump around and read something that's easier to focus on or just more interesting. Do not do this if you are a procrastinator. I had a lot of trouble reading flow. It was slow paced and it took me a lot longer to read than I had planned. So I planned to read about 1 page a minute, but with this book, it was taking me more like 2-3 minutes per page. So I'd read a few pages, and if I just couldn't focus on it, I'd switch to something else. But I did get the book done. So if you're worried you won't actually finish the book, stick to your schedule. But if you know you'll get it done, jump between books, keep it fun, it's not that serious. I found that the best way to switch between books, at least for me, is to one, have a mix like we talked about of lighter and heavier books, and kind of mentioned this, a mix of books and audiobooks. And ideally, the audiobooks are the lighter ones. I know it's kind of under the topic of planning your personal curriculum, not implementing it, but even if you do have the book, it may be worth checking to see if your library has the audiobook version. Audiobooks are amazing for when you don't have time to sit down and read something. Like on Saturdays when I'm cleaning, I can get through like 5 or 6 hours. I don't always do that, but if it's a lighter read, if it's easy to pay attention, if there's not a lot of terms that are kind of unique to that subject, I will try to breeze through it on an audiobook. And if I have to take notes on it, I will pause, either make like a note within the audiobook, or what I usually do, I just open notes and just type out a thought. Again, only do that with some books. If you cannot focus on it, it's really not worth it. You're wasting your time. I talked about how I'm taking notes in my other video, but I want to bring up another point about it and why it may be useful for you. I don't take notes while reading. I'll underline something and then put sticky notes sticking out of it just so it marks it. Doing this really helps me just stay in the reading zone. So after I finish the book, I give it time. Obviously, I still need to type up all of these notes. I'll type up notes after I finish the book or sometime else in the future. I'm realizing this is going to be so much typing just to get the quotes down. I think what I'm going to try to do is use voice to text on my notes and then copy that into Obsidian. And I think it's useful because if I flip to a sticky note and I don't really understand why I underlined something, I don't remember what it's about or like why it's important to my learning objectives, it's probably a sign that I wasn't paying attention or it just didn't stick, and it's a sign that I should reread that section. It's annoying, but it does help me learn. Obviously, this won't work for certain things like science textbooks. I just picked up this book, Explorations: An Introduction to Astronomy, and it'll be much, much more useful if instead of reading the whole book, kind of underlining things and going back to type it up, if I just type it up as I go and review each chapter and making sure like I have a good understanding before moving on. I think this is the first time the bookshelf is making an appearance on the channel. Exciting. I would love to do a tour. I would love to do like a book shopping video, but that's a video for another time. But as you can see, there's a ton of space on this bookshelf and I'm really excited to fill it. Right now, we're talking about stupid books. And this is coming from a very unpretentious reader. Years ago, I read something from Atticus and I thought I really liked that and bought 2 of his books. I'm not saying if you don't like Atticus, that makes you pretentious. I understand why it's unpopular among people who like poetry. Anyways, I found that I cannot trust Goodreads or Amazon reviews, and I kind of knew this before, especially because I got a lot of book recommendations from YouTube, and I saw what people were recommending over there. Not the best, especially in like the nonfiction business spaces. But I wasn't expecting so many like Goodread reviews to just be like borderline untrue. So here's the advice. It's okay to take a gamble on a book. And it's also okay to decide that this is the stupidest thing you've ever read and just take it DNF and move on. Or, you know, that it's a good book, but it doesn't really help meet any of your learning objectives. Predatory Thinking, genuinely one of the worst books I've read in a very long time. And it doesn't even really talk about the concept of outthinking your competition. It just goes into like really basic creativity stuff, and it does it badly. I read half of it and then kind of skimmed the rest of it to see if there was anything I would be interested in reading, and there wasn't. So did not finish. I also didn't finish Your Brain on Art. I think it was an interesting book. I got about 2/3 of the way through it, but there really wasn't any new information and it wasn't really what I thought it was going to be. So it really wasn't relevant to what I wanted to learn. And also, I don't know how much I can trust the book because a lot of like the evidence they're using, I don't think is appropriate for a scientific book. And I got that from the library. I ran out of time, had to return it, did not finish. I did finish this book and I should not have. Do Inhabit is a very short book. It is 119 pages. And here's the thing, I wasn't expecting anything crazy about this, but I have read better blog posts than this. This goes over possibly the most basic and common sense approaches to decorating your space and interior design. There were like tidbits of interesting information, but it was all stuff I've heard before. Also, there is a funny typo in this. The good thing about choosing to not finish a book is that it frees up a lot more time you can either spend quitting the curriculum early or time that you can spend reading another book. I would love to find books to replace these ones, but I think I'll wait till I'm later in the curriculum to do that. I loved books before I could read. I didn't fall asleep with stuffed animals, I fell asleep with books. I read every book I could get my hands on. I would go to the library with this gigantic tote bag, fill it all up with books, check them out, read them in a week, take them back to the library to return, and then repeat the cycle. I wish I would have made a Goodreads account when I was little because I can't even imagine how many books I've read. But around high school, I couldn't stand reading, and it was because of the reading I was doing in school. Over one of the summers, I read Fahrenheit 451. Absolutely loved it. Had to read it for school later that year. Hated it. This kind of wore off when I got into college, but I was still definitely in a reading slump. And I think this was mostly because all of the reading I was doing was assigned. I found what helped was having books I was excited to read and wasn't assigned by school or by me. A good example of that is, the personal curriculum. So if you can, try to make the time to read something interesting. I went book shopping over the summer and picked up a few books that I am excited to read. All fiction. The personal curriculum is all nonfiction books, so I feel like having fiction books to read for fun is just a nice separation. And when you're reading fun books, don't put like a due date on it. Take your time. It should be enjoyable. And okay, this is kind of a bad example, but right now I'm reading Mrs. Dalloway. I want to push myself out of my comfort zone because I do not enjoy character-driven storylines and I don't really know if this is the correct term, like stream of consciousness writing. And it's so slow, but it is getting more interesting as I read. So I do want to finish it. And I do like the writing. The writing is very beautiful. It's just a pain. I also picked up this collection of essential tales and poems, Edgar Allan Poe. I had to read The Raven and The Telltale Heart in high school. I liked it as much as I could like something that was assigned reading. I mostly didn't enjoy it, but I remember after I finished it, I thought back and I was like, you know what? I actually really like it. I wonder what else he's written because I'm sure they were probably going to give us some of, his lighter works, not anything that was too dark. I do not know anything about what is in here. I kind of gave it a brief overview and I didn't recognize any of the titles, so I'm kind of going in blind to it, but I really hope I like it. And we got 3 little small books here. First is Cat's Cradle. I really like Lemony Snicket's writing style, and someone on Reddit recommended reading this book. I had to read Agatha Christie in high school, hated it, but growing up I really love Nancy Drews, and I do love a good mystery, and I think the reason I just hated the book I had to read was because it was assigned reading. So I thought I would give Christie another shot. I have Death on the Nile and Hickory Dickory Death. I think that's all I've got, so I'll see you in the next one. Bye.